Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to pick up right where we left off last time with abstraction. The title of this one is Whatever You Do, Don't Trust Yourself. Of course, this is the message that we are given continuously because we live in a society which is based on the theory that humans are fundamentally flawed and bad. Therefore, the worst thing you can do as an individual is trust yourself. For purposes of identity, of course, this creates innumerable problems, which we will talk about, and then we'll talk about the obvious solutions. But I want to return to abstraction and just start where we left off. I actually had more material, and I didn't know whether to do like a 90-minute lecture, and I thought, well, I'll just shorten it up a little bit and see if we can focus it down and then do it sort of in two halves. So in a way, this is really a good part. Whatever part that was, I've lost track of how many parts. Part 8, were we on part 8? Anyway, this is part 8B maybe, or 9. I'm not sure how to categorize all this. So anyway, whatever you do, don't trust yourself. So I want to return to this notion of abstraction. And my example that I love here is the concept of abstract art. And people are always hung up about abstract art and issues around that. And what does it mean? And how do we know what it means? And we're absolutely, as far as I can tell, 180 degrees wrong about how we approach art in this sense. And what happens is we think of non-abstract art, or representational art as it's sometimes called, as quote-unquote real art, or art that you can understand. And abstract art is sort of this modern, perhaps flash in the pan. Steven Pinker, in one of his books, actually argues that it'll go away, that it isn't real art. Abstract art is not real art, which is, of course, one of the silliest things you can argue, but that's a claim that he makes. Now, here's the thing about that. It's the other way around. Representational art, we are told, we know what it means because it represents something else. Think how crazy that is. It's not the picture itself. We'll just stick with painting for a moment. If we look at a painting and the painting represents something else, then we can go, oh, I don't have to worry about the painting. I just have to worry about what the painting means, and what it means is somewhere else. It's not here. This is of course, the Renaissance made this really popular because lots of stories were built into Renaissance art. And the funny thing is, over the years, over the centuries, we've lost track of, we don't know what the symbols mean anymore. We don't know the stories of these saints. We don't know who these donors are. And so all of these stories, all of the stuff that was representational, or at least symbolic in the paintings, lost all resonance for us. And so we're thrown back onto art that we love, or is generally quite popular, even though we no longer know what it's supposed to represent. And so they try and fill it in all these backstories, which is all great. Again, big fan of art history, but part of it is we like the abstract, if you will, parts of these paintings. We love the form and the balance and the composition and the color palettes and all these other elements that don't tell a story per se have an impact on us, and we respond to that. And then people say, oh, well, this is a great work of art because it means something else, right? There's a code there, the Da Vinci Code. Good Lord, somebody kill me. That there's this, there's some other story narrative being told, not the painting itself. With abstract art, the reason it's abstract is because it doesn't represent anything. And so then the story is, well, then how could it mean anything? And they've tried, sort of the culture has tried to backfill that gap by saying, oh, well, we'll have artist statements. Oh, we'll have little captions that'll tell us, friendly cat number 7 or something. And then we go, oh, this is sort of a friendly cat. I don't know why they do this. By the way, they do this with classical music. They call it program music. And they go, oh, this is the sound of the ocean. It's not the sound of the ocean. Lumiere, Debussy's beautiful, fabulous piece is not, it might have been inspired by it, might evoke that, but it's not the ocean. It's not representational in any way. If it wasn't titled Lumiere, I doubt someone would go, oh, that's the seaside of France. They might just go, oh, that gives me this sort of open feeling or something. See, it's not representational. Music can't really be, maybe there are exceptions, but generally music can't really be representational in that sense. So what are you left with abstract art? Well, you're left with the thing itself. You're left with the painting, and you're left with you standing in front of the painting and having an experience. And that coming together, that individual encountering an individual work and the communication that goes on is moderately unique. I mean, probably evokes similar emotions in lots of people, but there's going to be a huge range of responses, of course, because we're quite varied as individuals, something we'll talk about more. And so your encounter there is yours. What does it mean? Well, it means what it means to you. It means, how do you feel? What comes into your mind if you sit with this painting for a minute, for 5 minutes, for 50 minutes, for 2 hours? How does it come to be expressive to you? What comes to your mind? What feelings? What flits through your mind when you see it, when you close your eyes and open your eyes again? All of these possible experiences are there, and they're real. But what we're told is they aren't really real, because a lot of other people can't agree with, or a lot of other people can't verify that you're having the right experience. Right now, if something is painted and it's supposed to look like a horse, and we know what a horse looks like, then we can all agree whether it's a good or not so good representation of a horse. So that's great. See, we get that outside verification for our experience. With abstract art, it's much more elusive from that bigger context. However, it shouldn't be elusive at all to the individual, because you're actually experiencing it. You don't need any other knowledge. You don't need any background. You don't need to know how to read. You don't know. You need zero. You just need to bring yourself, which of course is the most difficult thing, hence a series on identity, but bring yourself to a position where you can open your mind and experience a work of art that it's not supposed to mean anything else. You can't say, oh, I don't know anything about the 16th century, so I'm sure I'm missing things. And, oh, look, here's a huge long paragraph next to the painting. I'll read that, and it'll tell me what I'm supposed to feel. It'll tell me what I'm supposed to know about this piece. See, that is less real, less concrete. Abstract art is very much more concrete, more direct, and more personal, because it speaks or doesn't speak to you as an individual and not anything else. It's not supposed to be anything else. It's not supposed to represent anything else. It's just supposed to be what it is. And we distrust this immensely. I mean, we absolutely do not trust this as a society. Now, as individuals, we probably will. But as a society, we're like, oh, no. I need to have somebody tell me that my experience of this art is good, or I'm looking at good art. I need to know that. I need to know that I'm feeling the right way when I experience that. So I need a caption or a booklet or something in my ear, as I mentioned earlier. And all of this is to say and to tell us that, what you actually experience when you stand in front of that painting or sculpture or building, or you hear that piece of music, is somehow less real, less vital, less important than somehow if it had a clear narrative or a clearer description, or if some outside authorities had verified for you that you were responding the correct way. Now, this would not be a big deal. I mean, who cares, really? Except for the pattern is absolutely consistent throughout every aspect of our culture. We're told all the time, I mean, in subtle ways and unsubtle ways, that, you're unreliable, don't trust yourself, be suspicious of your feelings, So when you're a kid and if you're a healthy, vibrant kid, you want to run around, they say, no, it's important for you to sit at your desk. So how you're feeling is wrong. Everything around you tells you, I guess I am supposed to sit at the desk. Even though I want to go outside and run around, I guess I'm supposed to sit here. And it'd be one thing to say, hey, you have to do this. But we tend to say not just that you have to, that it's necessary, but that, which is of course arguable, but at least you could say that. But we tend to say that if you don't want to do that, or you have a problem doing that, it's not that like, hey, this is a difficult thing that you're having a problem doing, which is not surprising because it's pretty unnatural for a young person to want to sit still for hours on end. Rather, we say, you're a bad person. You're a bad little kid, because even though you're doing precisely what one would expect a little kid to do, we say that you're doing inappropriate things and your behavior isn't acceptable, and so on and so forth. So not, hey, here's a challenge that you're not meeting. Rather, oh, you're bad. You're a flawed human being. So, and again, it just carries through consistently. And those messages distance us from the half of what we need, or well, I don't know, half. Can you say half? Let's just say one major component of what you need to have a firm grounding of a sense of identity, and that's a trust of yourself, a sense of your own insides and your own person being basically good. And this is back to the Confucian system, which I mentioned last time. The beautiful human thing about Confucianism is it assumes people are basically decent. That's the idea of Confucianism. It comes up over and over and over and over again that, people are basically good and they need to be nurtured in their goodness. And that good government, good society, good families, good friends, good husbands, good wives are all about helping nurture the native goodness that is inside everybody. Whereas the Christian tradition tends to assume everybody is evil and bad and flawed, and that they need to be punished, watched, monitored, and corrected, or else bad things will happen. The Hindu tradition, which we really haven't talked about much, but I do want to get to because it has a very different approach to this, says we don't care whether you're good or bad. Basically, it just almost doesn't have that category. It doesn't have the category of good human, bad human. It really is a tradition in its grandest sense, which emphasizes the isness of the individual and the filling of filling of social orders as the definition of goodness. So what you do is whether or not you're good. And what you do relative to your position, relative to the caste, or as the caste system fades, what is equivalent of a new caste system. And if you're fulfilling those and doing that, then you are by definition a decent person. If not, you're not. But even then, that's too strong. I mean, it really is almost a beyond good and evil situation over there, to quote Nietzsche. But it's a very fundamental different approach than telling someone they're wrong and bad all the time. So what happens to the individual is they're thrust into a society, told they're wrong, told they're bad, told they're unpleasant, they're evil, not to trust their feelings when they look at a piece of art, not to trust their feelings when they hear music, not to trust their feelings about a person. So you say, oh, I don't know about my boss. She or he's kind of, I think maybe they're stealing or something, and that kind of makes me dubious on them. And then people are like, well, yeah, but you can't say that. They're the boss, right? Like they're the position, authority, all these problems, right? All these suspicions that we get that we're constantly told not to trust. Don't trust yourself. And if you're on YouTube at all, because if you're listening to this, you probably are, because it's YouTube and a couple other places, but basically YouTube. I love these things, by the way, because I do philosophy all the time. I get my channels constantly feeding things about, unleash your unlimited potential, and you can do this and you can do that, and the greatness and the giant within, and all this. And it's, again, all of this sounds good and pro individual and pro you. However, once again, it's fundamentally misleading and terrible. And because a couple of ways this happens, again, very much like the abstract art versus the representational art, we've got it backwards. We feel like, if we tell somebody their unlimited potential, they're limitless, they're powerful, they're potentially amazing, we're actually telling them two different things, or at least two different things. One is that, hey, you suck because you have unlimited potential and you're not realizing it. Therefore, you're a bad person. Two, it's a lie because you do not have unlimited potential. We all have quite limited potential, which is groovy, but for some reason we don't want to say that to people. My potential is limited, your potential is limited. If nothing else, we're mortal, which is sort of a time limit. We have a use-by date. Think about that. We have a use-by date on us. We don't know what that date is. Of course, as we get older, we can kind of see the clearer outlines as it approaches, but basically, we don't know. But we know we have one. So we're not unlimited in any way, and it's just a silly, vexing claim that lies to someone. Now, I think most people who are not delusional, and I don't think most people are, I think most people in the Chinese tradition are pretty decent. Um, no, they don't have unlimited potential. They're perfectly clear on this. They're not confused at all. But they don't trust themselves. They've been told that they're supposed to feel like they have unlimited potential. And when they don't feel like they have unlimited potential, then they think, oh, I must be doing something wrong, right? There must be something wrong with me. All these other people feel like they have unlimited potential, and I feel like I would really like to take a nap in the shade, right? Sort of that, something is wrong with me. This narrative is clear, and so it's a lie on two levels, and it's disruptive. And so people go, okay, well, I want to unlock my unlimited potential, by which I think they mean they want to unlock the feeling that they would like to have of feeling like somebody who had unlimited potential, which is another way of saying I would like to feel like someone who is not me, of course, just undermining that identity some more. And so then I love these videos, and you can see, fast 3 days a week, only drink water, don't drink any alcohol, don't use any drugs, don't have any sex, give up pornography, give up video games. And it's this whole, it's by the way, it's perfectly clear. This is monasticism. This is just sort of, it's amazing how this stuff it just cycles back around in new technological garb. Here it comes, if you look on these YouTube channels and what they tell you to give up, and you read the monastic orders from, in the 19th century or 9th century Cistercians or something, you'd go, oh, look, they're reestablishing Cistercian monasteries. How cool is that on the internet? Which is weird, but cool. And the idea is like, oh, if you stop doing this and stop doing that and stop doing this and stop doing that and stop doing this, then you will find at your core this just absolutely burning perfection that will fill the universe with your power. No. You won't, because you might feel better. I mean, try all this. But by the way, I'm huge with experiments. I say try everything. I always say this. I've said this in many lectures, but I think it's worth repeating. Try some of this stuff. Try giving up whatever. Don't play any video games. Don't read any books. Don't listen to radio. Don't drink. Don't take drugs or take drugs. Right? Try both. I mean, how do you know otherwise? I mean, honestly, I think you need to, just try things just to see how these experiments work for you. But none of them are going to make you, or they hopefully won't make you feel like you have unlimited potential. That would probably be the drugs talking if you're trying the drugs part of the experiment, because we do have limited potential. We're just, we're humans. We're great, wonderful, amazing, incredibly capable things, but we're not unlimited. And I think all to the good. Imagine what we would do if we were unlimited. Wow, terrifying in some ways. But so here we are, right? We're surrounded by these messages, and even when we start to suspect that something is wrong, we encounter messages that tell us things like, oh, unleash the giant within. You have all this power. You just need to reform yourself. And so one way to begin to address this, and again, I know I'm on the response side of this, which I'm always hesitant about because I'm not a big one for suggesting what people should do. But one thing to think about, and one way to address this, which is just, by the way, the converse of this, is just the logically necessary inverse, which is limit outside input, as I mentioned last time, is to experience the concrete. And the most important concrete is to experience yourself. One needs to maybe try, give up, as I just said, like these people, other people on YouTube. You need to begin to trust yourself, and to trust yourself, you need to actually start listening to yourself. So you can listen to other people, absolutely. You can take other input, great. You can read books or watch videos or listen to radio or whatever it is that works for you. But then at some point you have to not do that. You have to actually turn it off, whatever it is, the books, the voices, the other conversations, and just sit with yourself for a while, or walk with yourself, or lay in the garden, take the nap with yourself, do whatever it is you like, to go for a drive, whatever, pleases you. And then you can start to listen to you, and you can go, oh, this is maybe something that comes from me. This is something that resonates with me, or this is something that just popped into my mind from who knows where. And that pattern or that process will allow you to ground the half. Like I said, burn like half again. That part that is necessary, that has to come from the inside. You have to have spent time with yourself to have a sense of self-identity. And of course, our society does everything it can to prevent you from doing that. I mean, they call it the attention society for a reason, or attention economy, because we have so many opportunities to be distracted. And what are we distracted from? Most importantly, we're distracted from ourselves. So we don't hear the voices in our mind. We hear the voices that are coming from the outside, which is all to the great. But at some point, you have to spend time with you to know what you think, what you feel, how you are, what you care about, what you're interested in, because our culture will fill you up endlessly with suggestions for what you should be interested in, how you should feel, how you should react to a painting, what music you should listen to, how should you spend your time. The infinite opportunities will tell you about that all the time. Whatever pictures you follow on Instagram, you'll get ads for stuff that tries to reinforce that, to grab your attention, to keep you occupied. But is it really coming from you? It's an important question. How much of this is internal? And this is why I think the abstract art example is so important. You can stand in front of the painting and go, it doesn't resonate with me. And so once you have that firmly in your mind and you've looked at it and you've said, today, maybe tomorrow, maybe yesterday it would have, but today it just doesn't. Great. Now you have something very, again, interesting use of the word concrete, but you have a concrete feeling and understanding for yourself of this work. And people might say, oh, it's a great work and you're supposed to feel this. But if you don't feel it, the suggestion is that you are wrong again, right? Oh, this is a great work. If you don't understand that it's a great work, that means there's something wrong with you, as opposed to you just don't care for that. I mean, why does this make you a flawed human being as opposed to someone who just doesn't care for that particular painting? A lot of other people might. A lot of people might be blown away by it, which is good for them. And so that sense of distrust, that sense of not valuing your own impressions and ideas is, again, just deep-seated. And one of the only ways to do that is to spend more time with yourself, just listening to yourself, getting in touch and feeling how you feel. Now, it doesn't mean how you feel is a correct analysis of the world, of course. Our emotions often mislead us. Our ideas are often wrong. But at least it gives you a starting point. It gives you something to begin with. Because otherwise you're just beginning with things from the outside. And, we know danger, Will Robinson, right? Things out there are not always friendly and helpful. In fact, often not. Another aspect of this, of never trust yourself, and this comes from novels and films and our culture generally, is the notion of, the epiphany, the coming of age story, the arrival story, so many, and I'm not opposed to these generally, but what the narrative is there comes a day, and on that day, you have the breakthrough. You get the realization. You have the insight. You kill the dragon. You marry the cute guy. You get the perfect job. You have the insight about your childhood, and boom, end novel, end movie, end story. You've arrived. Boom, you're the man. You're the woman. Things are great. Wrong, of course. Again, don't trust yourself, because what we know, or at least what we should know, is that we grow and change. This notion of a fixed identity, of the person that I was when I was 9, is the person when I'm 18, is the person when I'm 27, is the person when I'm 36, 45, 54, 63, 72, right? 81. Why would I expect that to be true? In fact, it would be terrifying if it were true. Imagine you reached an age and that was it. You're done, right? Nothing else. You're fixed. So no living thing does this. Living things change, they evolve, they grow. And it doesn't mean, of course, this creates all these metaphysical problems of how much stays the same? Are we really at all the same person? How much is continuous? Are we completely unrecognizable to our other self? These are really great philosophical questions that I think deserve lots and lots of pondering. But fundamentally, I think we all know that you are not the person you were a year, 2 years, 5 years ago in some ways. Now, it may not be major ways, but it is probably enough that you go, if everybody's like reread a book, as always, of course, I'm a book person. So if you've ever reread a book that you read, 20 years ago, you go, oh, that was a great book. I love that book. And you reread it and you're like, I think this book has changed. Right? My tendency is to always imagine that somehow the book has been rewritten in the meantime, right? And I'm like, well, that wasn't as good as I remember it being. Must be something wrong with this book. But really, of course, this is just tracking evolution, my personal change, my personal transformation through time. That things that resonated for me and really seemed important or emotionally moving later don't seem that revelatory. One, because I've already read it, so it would be weird in some ways if it did. But two, because maybe I don't agree as much, or I don't find those things as resonant, or that I've just moved on from that. Or if you have a favorite album, you've listened to it a bunch of times, and then someday you put it on and you just go, okay, not that excited about that music anymore. I think I've, that genre or that artist or that composer, I'm just like, something about it doesn't appeal to me in quite the same way that it appealed to me a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago. I've moved on, which is all well and good. Or maybe it does. Or maybe you go, 30 years later, I see something new in this. Like, I thought I really understood it before. I did not understand it before. Or I've understood it in a different way today. And that makes it really exciting for me. That, maybe one great example is I never had any interest whatsoever in medieval theology. I just have to say, this is the part of the history of philosophy where my mind just goes blank. I can't keep all the different sects straight. I can't keep just these seemingly implausible arguments that they're all, metaphysics gone mad. And, I really struggled with this part of philosophy and always have. But now that we're in this technological world, and I'm seeing all of the themes, not just me, by the way, but I'm seeing lots of these themes from medieval theology repeated, right? Lots of technological, like all these people who are basically turning themselves into monks online, saying, give up this, give up that, perfect yourself, eliminate your sins. You may as well burn the devil out of you. If they just say that, it'd be clearer. I'm like, wow. And so it's cast a lot of these theological concepts from the Middle Ages in a new light for me, and making me understand that these aspects of cultural history that I thought were just some absurd offshoot of medieval philosophical craziness are in fact much more deep-seated and consistent than that, which makes them vastly more interesting to me. So that was my own limitation. This was my own, failure to understand how profound these people really were thinking within their own context, and how much they were very much more in touch with the cultural ebbs and flows and tides than I am, because it just seemed just crazy and nonsensical. But it turns out, no, there's they've really tapped something into deep cultural roots in the West. And so, wow, all of a sudden my interest in medieval theology has oddly increased by these techno people who are trying to say we live in a matrix, or we live in a hologram, all these kinds of crazy ideas, which, word for word, maybe I should do a lecture on this at some point in the future. This is just word for word reproduction of monastic arguments that have been going on for centuries, which is, I'm not even quite sure what to make of it, to tell you the truth. But I guess the popularity of those sorts of modes of thought about the universe don't go away, which is not surprising. So, sort of bit of an aside, but so we don't stay the same. We are transforming through time. And so if we have this concept that we're supposed to reach a point and stop, then again, we're misunderstanding ourselves. But I think people know that they feel differently about the world and themselves as time goes by. And again, we get this message that says, no, you should feel the same. You've arrived. You're an adult, right? You've got a career, right? You should, however, it's manifest, this notion of, these things are fixed, and you are supposed to be fixed within them. And yet, what could be clear, except for our world, is unfixed, and we are changeable. We are changeable beings in a changeable world. And so this notion of trying to have a fixity of identity being something that's locked in is of course not just crazy, but it's crazy making. I think it drives people a little bit mad. And that, so it is people who get stuck in the past. They have a nostalgia and they want to stay in a place where maybe they were the most happy they were, or they at least remember themselves being happy. And so then that nostalgia becomes fixed to them as the good. And so they try to associate themselves and their actions and their being with that, which is not, which makes sense. But if you understand that you're changing, that you're evolving physically, intellectually, emotionally, then eventually this is just going to create trouble rather than embracing change. But again, hard to embrace change because all of the society around you will become invested in you being like you are. They're like, okay, if I know you a little bit, I want to create a version of you in my mind, and I want that person to be like that. And if you're not like that, or you begin to change, then I'll be disappointed because you're not fulfilling usually people's completely unarticulated and not particularly important sensibilities about who you should be. And so you get negative feedback from that, often quite powerful, but often just subtly negative feedback. And this, again, undermines our sense of ourselves. And the only way to fight against that, again, is to have, to be basically sort of moderately self-aware, to be able to go, oh, yeah, no, I used to like to go out on Friday nights and drink till 4 a.m. And my friends like to do that. But now I'm getting older and I don't want to go out on Friday nights and drink till 4 a.m. in noisy bars or whatever. And if your friends still want to do that, now you start creating tension. And so you can just keep doing it, which is lying to yourself and lying to them in a way, or you can wave your hand at some point and go, yeah, you guys knock yourself out, go out, have fun, but that's, my fun, my sense of fun has changed. And hopefully through our lives, our the kaleidoscope of opportunities for us to have joy, it expands and it changes, right? Like because think of all the possibilities, ways to experience joy. What would be terrifying to think that only 1 or 2 of them were available to us and we just stuck with those. Maybe that would be liberating. Who knows? To me, it seems like because we're going to change through time, it's better to have those changes and transformations. And maybe some of them will stick with you, right? Maybe some will stick with you throughout your whole life. But some will probably fade and some other ones will rise up to take their place. And that sort of embracing that process is part not of losing our identity, because again, identity not fixed. We have that theory that identity is fixed. We ask, who am I, right? We always ask that question, who am I? As opposed to who am I today, who am I tomorrow, who am I the next day, right? It's not a soluble, it's not a problem. I guess this is one way of saying this. It's not a problem that you solve and then you move on to your other problems. It's a knowing or a sensibility or a sense. It's just like, I think I'm kind of feel this way and let's see how that works. And that, we like to say, or imagine that we're going to have an answer. And then, of course, this projects out, as we're all familiar with this sense of, there should be an answer. And so we go, if I get that car, if I become the heavyweight boxing champion of the world, if I get that degree, then I'll be where I want to be and I'll be who I want to be. And it actually could be true. But it's only going to be temporary. I can almost guarantee that, because then you start to change. The fact of just the process of doing these things, of course, changes you, and then you achieve whatever your goal is, which, however laudable and wonderful, and actually could be quite fulfilling. So it's not against all of that. It's just to recognize that, and then one day you'll be like, okay, I did that, or like, okay, that's fine and wonderful, but now I want to do something different and wonderful, because I'm not that person anymore. The person who gets the car or who wins the heavyweight boxing championship of the world is not the person who wanted to do that by definition, right? It's just sort of a transformative experience, and now you're a different person. But culturally, our movies tend to end, right? Well, that's the end of the movie. That's the big denouement, right? It's denouement. It's all over with. Here we go. Yeah, but in life, it's not over with yet. We roll along until we don't. But until then, we roll along and develop and think and hopefully prosper and grow and become more elaborate and more complex and more subtle. But no. See, our culture tells us don't do that. It's always wrong. You're always making a mistake. You're always on the wrong track if you're changing, if you're altering, if you're becoming someone you weren't yesterday, rather than embracing that. Even psychology, to a way, tries to say, we want to find that stable core of who the person is. And it's like, I'm not sure people are stable cores. I certainly don't feel that stable core most of the time, I would have to say. I feel more like I'm floating around. And maybe that's just me. But that seems to work for me. And so that's the kind of, environment or outlook that one can have about the environment in which we're immersed. So all of this is a very long sort of extension of the abstraction concept, is to say that part of what's really concrete is not just things you can touch and feel and smell, which those are very important, but also that notion of you and how you're feeling. Those are very concrete. We don't think of them as concrete. In fact, it's sort of the opposite of our use of the word concrete. But if you're going to have a sense of your identity, you have to have that sort of time spent with yourself, so that you can have, even though this is going to be, you can have a sense of the patterns that you live in and the feelings that you have and how they change over time and how they recur and all of these elements that do form your interaction with the world. And then you can begin to analyze or feel or respond much more successfully to the varied and incredibly unhelpful input to which we're all subject to much of the time. And so the next time you're thinking about abstraction and concreteness, do think about that abstract painting, because it really is the most concrete thing going if you think of you as the arbiter of its meaning. If you don't, then it's a problem. But if you think of yourself and your experience with that painting as being the real, as being what matters, as being important and being in touch with that, then it becomes transformative. Then you have that opportunity to really experience for yourself the power and possibility of all kinds of things, not just abstract painting, but of course, I just think that puts it in very high relief, because we tend to, again, think of abstract painting as being abstract rather than the most direct access to an aesthetic experience that we can have. Thank you very much.